In this video, you will hear the questions and answers from the second presentation, the one with Ofer, Mina, and Anil, the chemical presentation.
Would the company consider to license one of the two verticals that are currently not actively being worked on, such as rubber tires? If so, what do you think a third party would pay for such a master license agreement? So this question, I think, is premature, honestly speaking. We would be more interested in partnering with a partner, right? So we've got an inbound interest on these verticals that we've mentioned that are outside of the three verticals. When the partner and the deal and the time is right, we would absolutely pursue something. We're not opposed to licensing, certain of the verticals that are not our main focus currently. But it would, to dive into that, it would be a little bit premature. Ofer, do you want to say anything on that aspect?
Yes, just to kill the feeling that maybe if we don't license something, then maybe we're left behind and time passes and somebody will come with this. So I'd like to say that because we see the technology as in a distinct advantage, and from our perspective at this point of time, the patents are protected, and we can do more work, of course. But given that this drives our philosophy of approaching customers and just answering to their needs rather than just taking an application and move forward, we absolutely want to work with them, but we want to create that dynamic of competing on us. And so this will come in stages, and so far it's answered very good to, the concept and the philosophy is the return of it is very, very interesting for us. It's very beneficial for us.
And to dive into the second part, ultimately, the value of such a master license agreement would be driven by the market size, the feedstock size, and the delta that we deliver with our technology, right? We've kind of illustrated time and time again that we are more efficient than anything else out there, and that has a tremendous amount of value to anybody processing material. So if they have existing material that they want to work through, it would probably look closer to something like a JV or a profit sharing, right? That is probably the simplest way that I can foresee something along those lines, right? It would be driven by the exact quantity of material that needs to be worked on. Or if we were dealing with a company that would want a master license agreement, we're talking about a company that's, in the multi-billion dollar scale. It would probably be multi-level agreement which includes multiple components that the company would have to dive into. But anyways, I'll leave it there. Move on to the next one. So next question here is, how long can you run the system in continuous operation before it needs to be shut down for maintenance? Does this change at R3 level? So high level answer here is the commercial unit will be run on a continuous flow, 24/7, 3 shifts a day. But any equipment, because of the mechanical nature of it, needs to have downtime, maintenance throughout the year. So I'll let you dive into that, Ofer, if you want to say anything else.
No, we see there is fairly simple operation here. It's there's no lot of I don't see moving parts. There is a reactor that is working, and there is different philosophies to operate reactors when you need to clean them. You can do, for example, multiple reactors, and they can be a battery, and you can ideal some and operate on the other, and you can ideal on the other and operate some. This different concept of operating, which we are now contemplating what will be the best, and they are best basically based on different scenarios. So we recognize the need to do treatment and service, but we don't see right now that hurting our operational yield. Anil, do you want to comment on that? Or
Yeah, it will be like similar to refinery. Like as Ofer mentioned, there will be multiple reactors. So few will be operational and few will be on the downturn.
If you operate with 2 batteries of reactors, which will not cost quite a different, then you can at some point of time just ideal one, do the treatment, move back, ideal the other, move this back, and then go back to full. So it's never stopping. It's just we don't see reason to stop this thing. And this is very, very, like Anil mentioned, in the philosophy of a refinery. That's what refineries are doing.
Yeah, and the bottom line, guys, ultimately, this is apples to apples. It's no different than any other process out there when it comes from the equipment, the downtime, we actually expect to have better numbers from downtime because we apply lower, I guess, stress condition, right? Lower heat. That heat and that energy creates a little bit more stress on the equipment. So if there's any advantage, we have an advantage over legacy approaches. Other than that, it's pretty much very similar.
Well,
right?
there is a little bit of pressure and cracks and things like that because we are using high pressure. I mean, but overall, you are correct. I mean, there is it's just let's say in general for maintenance reason, we don't see anything fairly difficult. So fairly difficult, would be something that will create a stopper that will stop the operation for several months, so we could reignite it. There's nothing like it.
How many years does the patent last? We did address this yesterday. Ultimately, we are continuously adding more and more layers of patent protection, right?
For every patent we do, we are looking backwards and forwards, and we give maximum lifetime to the operation.
And not only that, what we also do is any new IP we create, we try to cover the prior art, and we make sure whatever the improvements we are making, we get them covered in addition to what we have. So that way we are kind of extending the life of our patents.
Backwards and forwards, yes. Backwards and forwards. There is a lot of philosophy behind it. Quite intense.
So there's another question on the patents here. On one of the earlier slides, there was a note saying patent pending. Could you elaborate what is this patent for? When do you expect to get the patent granted? And how important is this patent? The pending?
Yeah, so the reason we've been, so when we started this the journey in the we were focused on the heavy oil, and there is implications to, of course, plastic and renewable. And then when we move into the renewable, there were implications back to the heavy oil and then back to the plastics. And so the current patents that we have reside on the novelty of the previous patents on one hand, but that they're independent on the other hand. And so we feel safe that they'll be granted. Of course, never know. I'll start and say that we had very good experience at the beginning. I mentioned that 10% of we are among those 10%. At the first patent there was about 36 claims in the first patent, and we were among the 10% that the examiner did not reject. So I think in terms of the novelty and the confidence that those patents are secured and will be granted, of course, it's critical to the company on one hand, but we feel very safe that this will happen.
And typically for patent, once we file what we call is provisional, it gives an year to make it non-provisional kind of thing, and from there it could take anywhere from 2 to 3 years to get the patent granted.
So far, we haven't seen anything coming back with strong resistance, and it's an ongoing process.
Which gives everybody an idea, what it takes to build what we've built, right? So it's not something that happens overnight, but we're at the perfect stage right now to start scaling aggressively. A question again on the patents here: is there a summary of the patents filed granted anywhere?
I think there are all the names and the patents and the numbers. The pending and the non-pending are both on our MD&A and our reports, and we can provide one if somebody wants to see them. Yes. And by the way, for the audience, I'll say with safety. Sorry, I don't want to be cocky here, but you will read the first patent, which is granted in 2013. There is unlikely that you will understand how is it connected to the 2018. It's a craft work that we keep.
We improved a lot after that.
Yeah.
So
and some of this patent, you can also look at patent database. Like if you were to Google US patents and with the company name, Aduro Energy, you will be able to see like the list of patent granted and pending.
Yeah.
Next question here. Having a system up and running, if you put 1 ton of mixed plastic in the system, how much energy do you need to feed the system, and how much product will you collect? I don't need to have precise numbers, but a realistic range would be very useful.
If we put a ton of material inside, we expect to get up to 90% of material out, which worth something. Some of it will worth more, some of it will worth less in general. In terms of the energetic, based on what we have today and the data that we have today, we don't take any more than, I'll say, up to 10% of the energetic calories that this feedstock is value. Anil, am I correct, or do you see more numbers?
Yeah, and also like our typical energy requirement is like just 30% of pyrolysis energy, you can say that, in terms of heat energetics.
Yeah. So one more thing that we said to people already in the public, you would not know that when we analyze the bitumen system, the bitumen process, it ends up to be a net positive energy system, which effectively means that we had more energy. We're creating the gases that the system has been created. There was enough energy there to run the process, and with a little bit of surplus to run other processes. And the yield there was close to 80%, 85%. And the amount of energy that we took was, again, similar in terms of numbers. So very, very efficient system. This is not the case with plastic. You need surplus, you need the makeup energy, because plastic is, I'll say, there's a very unique components there. There are less of a light components like in bitumen. But in general, effectively, what it means is that overall the system is very efficient.
Yeah, and I'd like to refer you to that one slide that we show that there's 90% liquid yield. That is the output that is sellable, that has a market value. The gas yield of 6% is something that can go back into energy production for the process.
Not all of it, half of it. But
half of it.
My apologies, half of it.
Yeah.
But the waste that is at the end, which is the solid waste, because there's a subsequent question or a follow-up question, is how much final non-processable waste would you have to deal with? That is the solid waste at the end there that we
4%, that's the total we received there, up to 4%.
But even that 4% is more like, it's not like, it's a organic waste, it's like a carbon waste. So it could be used for other purposes. So
yeah, we didn't account it for now, but yes, so you could reuse it. It's just the system is so efficient as is right now. There is a lot of work to do, and so we leave it at it. But there is definitely a good performance behind it.
Okay, what would you answer to someone who sees your presentation and comments? This technology process seems like too good to be true. Where's the catch? Ultimately, I'll just jump in here for a quick second. We hear that often.
I guess.
Right? And anybody that comes and disrupts an industry that has been around for a very, very long time using legacy approaches, and they've spent all their time improving those legacy approaches, stretching the limitations as far as they possibly can. But like I said yesterday, I mean, if they've improved this over 50 years and we're sitting at a place where only less than 10% of plastic is recycled, it tells you a pretty big message here, right? That the market in the industry is quite ripe for change, for somebody to go out of the box and think about a novel approach that has not been contemplated in the past. Hence why we're able to get all these patents, which is very unique for a company in this sector. Usually they get rejected because it's not different enough, right? So for us to be so successful, it kind of tells you why this is really, yes, it's really, really good, but it is true as well, right? So the skeptics out there are going to be there, and there's no way to deal with them other than, you know what, let's execute and show. And as we engage more and more partners and get traction, they're going to realize like, wow, this is really, really the real deal. So we can't really overpromise beyond that, but we tell people that are skeptics to, watch what we do and let us show you as we engage more and more individuals.
A few things I want to add is our team's observation and curiosity in the process. That's very important which helped us develop this unique process like a platform technology. Basically, our work on multiple technologies simultaneously and keen observation skills help us identify the advantage of one process and apply that to other to develop it. And that's where we develop such a unique process. So another thing I would say is, if you think about nature's polymer, which is asphaltene. So asphaltene itself is a nature's polymer, and we have worked extensively on that asphaltenes, like right from a batch to continuous process. and we were able to take apart these asphaltenes and create low molecular weight compounds. And what happened was, compared to our batch process, when we transferred this process in a continuous scale, we found that it was much more efficient and required low severity, like lower temperature, space time. So that's where we also have a confidence that when we move our process from batch to continuous, we will be getting a similar kind, because we're able to take apart asphaltenes, which are much more robust and rigid compared to polyethylene.
Question here. Am I understanding this right? The final product you would generate would range from feed for petrochemical industry to some final products from this industry, diesel, for example. So I guess the question is about our output. What would it be, and where would it feed into?
The output on a high level could be different product. It could be, of course, diesel, but it also could be an oil that could be fed later to a machine, say, called naphtha cracker, that is the machine that is responsible to producing chemicals for new plastics. So depending on the location, depends on the contract and on the company, our partners, the output will be adjusted to either one. But in all cases, it's some kind of a liquid hydrocarbons that worth more than it started with.
Important to understand as well that ultimately the tunable nature of our process allows us to really modify what our output is, right?
If you're looking at complete circularity, like the target product will be called naphtha, like carbon number ranging from C6 to C14, because that's the raw material for ethylene cracker feed to produce ethylene, which could be again made for polyethylene, like depending on what we are looking at. So for complete circularity, like the desired product will be naphtha.
Mm-hmm. Great. And so next question here, do catalysts deactivate? And if so, can they be recycled? Any issues with recycling, for example, graphite, coking, metal agglomeration, etc.?
I'll go if we can avoid, details, a little bit about more details. We can answer those things under NDA. In general, we collect the catalyst in the water, and we can reuse it again and again and again. It has a long lifetime, and it doesn't cost a lot. It's actually we can decide what to do with it. But beyond that, when we're talking about technicality of what is it we do, we like to keep it very modest and at a high level.
Catalyst could be recovered, recycled, and reused in the process. Like as per all the process, we can definitely do that. There is no issue. Depending on the economics, if we need to regenerate, we can definitely do that.
Great. Thanks for that, Anil. And this is a very unique aspect of what we do. And it's very important as an environmental company for us to focus on these aspects in every single part of our process, right? So we're not just looking for the output that is economically viable and makes financial sense, but we also want to make sure that everything we do has an environmental impact that's positive.
That's correct.
Next question here. When you had been private company, how did you finance the company since 2011? I think that's a question for Ofer here, but I'll give you my high-level answer. Ultimately, the company survived on family and friends. The founders, and by founders I mean current management as well. They are the founders of the company. 11 years ago, they put a lot of their private funds into the company. They were able to successfully get a lot of grants. They got a lot of support. I guess donated resources, including a lot of the employees were essentially not even getting paid their market rate, and Anil being one of them, of course. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
No expanding on that.
But ultimately, guys, like what's been invested on an equivalent basis,
you can expand on it. Sorry,
is very, very significant, right? Like beyond, I want to say to date, $10-15 million of cash that went in. To replicate this and have all of these these PhDs and people in the lab putting all their sweat equity into the company, we'd be talking about an equivalent of north of $100 million just to end the 10 to 12 years that went into this. So there's a lot that went in. The company was very, very disciplined in the way they got to this stage. And I think it's really a privilege to be able to to get involved at this stage after all of the grind and grunt work that has been done when they were private.
Yeah, and one thing I would add is like it was a highly dedicated and motivated team working. That's the important thing.
How much energy is used in comparison to the legacy companies, and how much in comparison to the final product made from crude? In case of plastic, for example. So I guess the question is energy consumption, apples to apples, between us and legacy approaches. I think Anil mentioned it was 30% of thermolysis is our energy consumption.
Yeah, we use only 30% of what traditional gasification or pyrolysis process use.
And we recover some of that from the gases that we said at the end of the day as well. So
yeah, like if we were to go for detailed energy recovery, we could improve that. So there is energy which could be recovered from the gas, but also our hot product at the end, because we need to condense them, like cool them. So the energy could be recovered from them to heat our inlet streams. Like there are a lot of ways to improve the energy efficiency of the process. Right now, what we are doing is just experimental scale. Like, so as we expand and go to next level, we will involve all those approaches.
And sorry, go ahead.
And with scale up, our energy efficiency will increase.
So it only get better as the process goes at a higher scale.
That's
now,
it.
With regards to bitumen, is that a similar? If we're using plastic as an example in what you just relate to us, is it the same for bitumen, to upgrading bitumen, or is it something that a little bit different from energy?
I think bitumen, we need slightly lower energy, but it's pretty much same, but we need lower energy than traditional processes.
Okay, perfect. Next question here. So EROI would be about 10 less the energy, but put in the capex. Sorry, I can't really understand this.
EROI stands for energy return on investment. So the heavy oil back in the night, basically the concept suggests that if you put a barrel, of energy, equivalent energy, how many barrels of equivalent material you would get outside. And so back in, 100 years ago, you would drill a hole in the ground, and you would maybe use one barrel, and you get close to 100 barrels back. This ratio has been drained down to the ratio of where in the Alberta environment you would put one and you would get maybe 4 barrels. We, in concept, are bringing this ratio back to the area of 1970, 1960, of anywhere between 20 and above barrels per 1 barrel. So it's not a complicated, but it's a really fascinating subject to talk about in length, but not in this I guess not here in this platform. We could say that the development of our work, as we are moving forward and moving towards from the 2-liter, 3-liter reactor to the ton per day reactors, to the largest reactors, it is always in our mind. There's always the thinking of how to improve efficiencies. So by way of example, we are taking all the light component immediately before we're doing anything to the heavy component, because we don't want to operate, we don't want to heat them, we don't want to crack them, we don't want to deal with them. So the philosophy of efficiency is embedded in everything that we do.
Okay, so I'll break this question down. It refers to Brightlands Camelot, and I'll rearrange the question a little bit. So does Brightlands perform vetting process? The answer is yes. Brightlands worked with the company for many, many months prior to engaging with us in a joint release that came out. And you can see their comments on Aduro, very positive, favorable comments. That was after working with us for a very, very, a lengthy time. Just, it's very few companies are able to join the campus, and this is the premier hub in Europe. And you could see that there's so many new technologies and evolving companies in Europe, especially the Netherlands. They're at the top of the, globally, in those areas and sectors. So for us, a Canadian company, to be able to join the leagues of the greats out there, that is a very strong position. And I don't think people fully understand how important Brightlands is. But I'll let you guys go back to that release and do some digging and research on Brightlands. Now, the next piece here is what was the process to be included in the Brightlands hub? And what is the investment equivalent made by Brightlands? So I'll address the investment piece. Ultimately, Brightlands it's almost, I want to say it's close to like an incubator, but for very, very large companies, right? So in their hub, they're working with all the majors who also essentially they engage some of the more innovative companies in the space, but with the goal that they would work with the other partners in the hub as well. So they connect the dots on all fronts with in terms of they help you establish a footprint in the Netherlands and in Europe. They help you partner with the right people. They engage you with all the industry leaders, again, mainly in Europe. There's help financially as well, but there's no real commitment at this stage before we get into a project. But it's really everything under the sun that you would expect a chemical hub to have. Ofer, you want to add to that and maybe talk about the process about engaging?
Yeah, the Brightland is not in the hub. They receive a lot of requests for pilots, and Brightlands become very, very selective of their selected pilots. For example, in the last 2 years, Brightland made a decision not to put any more thermal operation as pilots, so thermolysis, so anything that is pyrolytic one way or the other, they are rejecting. They're only looking at material that is more closer to what we do, that is some kind of a chemical approach. They've stopped doing this and they're rejecting a lot. So just being invited by Brightland is for companies like us, it's a big step. It's a confirmation that this technology won its right to the space. And beyond that, Brightland gives envelope of services associated with that. So they promote you. They would introduce you to companies. They would bring in discussions with partners, and basically will hug you in support, available support from grants, from investors, from operation, from post processing to pre-processing, everything that is out there, engineering companies, almost anything. In just for what we are planning to do in Brightland, we are contemplating between the R4 and the R5. So we don't want to do the same of R3, which means a system more of a ton per day, but we want to have a pilot that is meaningful, that will earn some money, but also would show a distinct approach to deal with the material that is otherwise harder to process. It's basically harder to process, and that contemplates certain activities. So this is how our mind set up for Brightland. So we're not rushing it. What we do in parallel is working in Ontario. Some of the organizations that are in Brightland are, working with us. And so when the time comes, we will come with an announcement and we'll move forward to build a larger process there.
Okay. Moving on to the next question here. Is it fair to say that R2 is about proving the technological side works as planned, and R3 aims to prove financial side? The answer before I pass it to Ofer is no. The technological side is fully proven. This is the scaling process, right? So each scale is meant to operate and optimize the subsequent scale. And for us, R2 is really used as a customer engagement, right? So we want to engage customers on the R2. We want to test multiple feedstock. We want them to challenge evolving feedstock and maybe putting contaminants. That's what we're doing there. So when we start putting more money into the next scale, we've done all of this and engaged potential partners and customers on the smaller continuous flow scale, right? It's not proven technology. It's just the process. Ofer, go ahead, please.
Yeah, it's not proven technology. It's a process, and you have to undergo the process. That's life, and that's reality. And we've been developing our stage to give you in comparison in the speed of lighting compared to others. So for others to reach an R2 level, that would take much more time often than us at this point of time. I'll refer it because of the simplicity of the process as an advantage. On the other hand, there's a lot for us to investigate and to learn and to study and to expand our know-how and intellectual property and engagement with customers. So R2 is dedicated for those activities.
Yeah, and I want to refresh everybody's memory from yesterday is that we're actually working on the steps for the R3 in parallel, right? Of course, we're not going to finalize the design because we need R2 to be running for a few months for optimization, but we're trying to iterate in parallel so we are efficient as we possibly can as we go to our commercial unit, right? So we're firing it on every single cylinder that we possibly can without sacrificing the actual quality of that scale-up process, right? We can't go faster than we are because at that point, that's where you make miscalculated mistakes, and then you got to go back and fix them. And I'll move on to the next question here. If going the owned and operated route in lieu of licensing post R3, thoughts of opening a plant in Quebec, i.e. cheaper electricity, provincial back funding, how meaningful in dollar terms can provincial federal subsidies be in helping finance potential plans? I'll take a stab at this question. Ultimately, the route of owning and operated would more likely come with a partner, right? A funding partner or somebody that would want to support. It would absolutely come with government support. We are working on some of those elements as we speak. It's very important for the government to be part of this. There's a lot of grants out there. There's a lot of government subsidies. There's a lot of green bonds. There's a tremendous amount of options that we have at the table once we're at that scale, right? So every time we scale to the next level, the door opens quite a bit in terms of potential financial partners that would want to engage in a project with us. I'm actually from Montreal, lived there 2/3 of my life. So, I understand the mechanics of the support from IQ, which is Investissement Québec, and the government of Quebec as well. They're big supporters of green technologies. So we just came back from Montreal last week, right? So we've had some great discussions with a lot of stakeholders, including potential investors as well, and potential partners. So we're not ignoring any province or even any country. If there's inbound interest in discussion, we're out there getting the word out, and we're expanding our network.
One question that I don't think was addressed was I saw a discussion on MCE, people talking about patents and how your patents are in a particular entity. They have a hard time being like, oh, is it an Aduro? It's in another entity. Can you talk about this a little bit?
All the patents assigned to to Aduro Energy, which is the operational company of Aduro Clean Technologies, so wholly owned subsidiary of the company. So Aduro Clean Technology owns all the patents.
There's absolutely nothing related to this company that is outside of the parent company.
It will come. There'll be others, of course.
So just for clarity, Mariusz, ultimately the company was named Aduro Energy, and that was the company that was operated by the founders, and that was purchased by the parent company, which is named Aduro Clean Technologies, 100% owned subsidiary of the parent company.
Now, when you guys become bigger, like what Yazan was talking about, if you reach a certain market cap, more institutions get involved. Is there any plan as to maybe listing on a different exchange, main board?
Yeah, our aspirations are to upgrade from the exchange, right? We want to find the right time. Right now, the team is quite busy operationally, but my focal point is at least to upgrade. Look, it's a bit more complicated, and I don't want to get into it too deep, but we want to be on a main board in the US. We might just try to do that if we get big enough and skip the middle steps in between, right? So the middle steps being upgrading in Canada, going to the TSX Venture, and then to the TSX main board, and then possibly getting a listing on the main board in the US. We might be better off skipping those middle steps and heading straight to the final stage at the right moment, or we try to do the middle steps in parallel until we get to a justifiable market cap that would justify listing in the US. So both are very much on the table.
I know that a lot of people have the same questions, so I hope that compiling the question and answer session was helpful to you to get a better understanding of this investment opportunity. But I also know that if you truly do good due diligence, which I think you should, he will have more questions. So I suggest that if you do have more questions, visit adurocleantech.com website, go to their investors section, and simply either call the company or email the company to get more questions. Don't invest in anything like this until you feel, you fully understand what it is that you're getting yourself into.